4 F-16s were locked on by enemy radar. SAM missiles streaked upward like deadly rain. Radio crackled with a young pilot's desperate cry, "We can't shake them! Someone, rescue us!" No one answered. Radar showed the signal. F-16 squadron lost. Suddenly, a calm female voice cut through the frequency. "Hog, inbound." Hold steady. From the horizon, engines roared like thunder. An A-10 Warthog dove down, twin GAU-8 cannons spinning. No one knew who was in that Warthog's cockpit, and why the entire F-16 squadron whispered the same name. Rea Vasquez was 28 years old, with long brown hair and deep melancholy eyes. She was an A-10 Warthog pilot who carried herself with quiet dignity despite constant ridicule. She had graduated from the Top Gun program, but after a major incident, she had requested transfer away from the spotlight to support roles. At her current Air Force base, the younger pilots regularly mocked her. The A-10 Hog is only good for shooting dirt. F-16s are the pinnacle of aviation. The Hog? That's just Cold War junk. Real pilots fly fast jets, not flying tractors. During meals, groups of F-16 pilots would deliberately sit near her table, lowering their voices to make snide comments. "We heard you used to be Top Gun. How'd you end up flying that flying plow over there?" Rea would remain silent, keeping her head down, never responding to their provocations. At night, she would sit alone in the hangar, running her hand over every scratch and dent on her Warthog's armored skin. On the instrument panel was a small piece of tape with the words, "Thunder is patient." An old maintenance technician later recalled, "I once saw her whispering to that hog like she was talking to an old friend." Those eyes weren't the eyes of someone weak. They were the eyes of someone who had seen things the rest of us had never experienced. What the other pilots didn't understand was that Rea had chosen the A-10 for reasons that went far deeper than assignment or punishment. The Warthog wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast. It didn't break sound barriers or win air superiority dogfights. But it saved lives. It protected ground troops. It brought people home. After losing her wingman during a high-speed intercept mission, Rea had made a promise to herself. She would never again fly a mission where speed mattered more than precision, where glory mattered more than protection. The A-10 was the perfect aircraft for someone who wanted to save lives, rather than take them. Its titanium bathtub could absorb damage that would destroy faster jets. Its 30mm cannon could eliminate threats that endangered friendly forces. But the other pilots saw only an outdated aircraft flown by someone who couldn't handle real fighters. They would make jokes about her flying a flying tank, while they soared through the sky in sleek, modern jets. They would question her competence, her courage, her place in a modern air force. Rea absorbed every insult, every dismissive comment, every suggestion that she was somehow less capable than the pilots flying newer, faster aircraft. She knew they were wrong, but she also knew that explaining herself would require revealing a past she wasn't ready to discuss. So she maintained her silence, flew her missions with quiet professionalism, and waited for the day when actions would speak louder than words. She had no idea that day would come sooner than anyone expected. The same F-16 pilots who mocked her outdated aircraft would soon learn that in the right hands, with the right pilot, the A-10 Warthog wasn't just a ground attack aircraft. It was a guardian angel with titanium armor and devastating firepower. And Rea Vasquez wasn't just another pilot assigned to fly it. She was Falcon 9. One of the most skilled combat pilots to ever graduate from Top Gun, now flying the one aircraft that matched her philosophy. Protection over glory. Precision over speed. bringing people home over personal achievement. A four-ship formation of F-16s launched into enemy territory, their mission to conduct reconnaissance over a narrow mountain valley. Intelligence had suggested light resistance, a routine flight into contested airspace. But intelligence was wrong. As the F-16s entered the valley, radar screens lit up like Christmas trees. SAM sites on both ridgelines had been waiting, creating a deadly crossfire that turned the valley into a killing zone. Surface-to-air missiles launched in rapid succession, their white smoke trails creating a deadly web across the sky. The F-16 pilots deployed chaff and flares, pulling high-G maneuvers to evade the incoming threats. But there were too many missiles, coming from too many directions. Radio transmissions filled with panic. "We can't shake them. Someone, rescue us. Multiple SAMs inbound. We're trapped. Fuel's getting low. We can't stay here much longer." Ground control responded with helpless frustration. "No available assets in the area. You're on your own out there." The F-16s were fast, but they were trapped in a box canyon with limited maneuverability. Every evasive turn brought them closer to the mountains, and every second they remained in the valley gave the SAM operators more chances to achieve a lock. Over 100 kilometers away, in a different hangar, Rea heard the emergency transmissions through the base communication system. She stopped her maintenance work and listened to the desperate voices of pilots who had mocked her just hours earlier. Young aviators who had dismissed her aircraft as obsolete were now facing a situation where speed and agility weren't enough. Without waiting for orders or clearance, Rea climbed into her A-10's cockpit and began the startup sequence. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, bringing the twin turbofan engines to life. Her voice cut through the emergency frequency with calm authority. "Hog inbound. Hold steady." The F-16 squadron leader's response was filled with disbelief. "A hog? Are you insane? That's suicide." "What's your fuel state?" Rea asked, ignoring the protests. 5 minutes max before we have to egress." "Roger. Stay above the valley floor. I'm coming in low." Rea flew her A-10 at treetop level, using the mountainous terrain to mask her approach from enemy radar. The Warthog's relatively slow speed, normally seen as a disadvantage, now allowed her to navigate through narrow valleys and around peaks that would have been impossible for faster aircraft. As the F-16s reached critical fuel levels and began to lose hope, the distinctive sound of twin turbofan engines echoed through the valley. The A-10 appeared from behind a ridge, flying so low that its landing gear almost touched the trees. What happened next defied everything the F-16 pilots thought they knew about air combat. Rea opened fire with the GAU-8 Avenger cannon, its distinctive brrrt sound echoing off the valley walls as 30mm rounds tore through the first SAM site. She pulled into a climbing turn, absorbing ground fire that would have crippled a faster, more lightly armored aircraft, then rolled into a dive on the second SAM position. An old maintenance technician later recalled, "We watched that hog dive into hell itself. When we heard the GAU-8 firing, we knew our pilots were going to make it home." Within minutes, Rea had neutralized the primary threats and created an escape corridor for the trapped F-16. "Path is clear," she announced calmly. "Egress northwest, Angels 15. The F-16 pilots, still processing what they had witnessed, formed up behind the A-10 for the flight home. As they climbed to safer altitude, one of the F-16 pilots whispered over the radio, "That wasn't just any pilot. That was Falcon 9. The name sent chills through the squadron. Everyone knew the legend of Falcon 9, the Top Gun graduate who had disappeared from elite fighter squadrons years earlier. Now they knew where she had gone, and they understood why. Reyna continued circling the area, ensuring the escape route remained clear as the F-16s climbed to safety. Her A-10 had taken multiple hits from ground fire, but the aircraft's legendary durability kept it flying. Over the radio, whispers spread through the formation. "That's impossible. That's Falcon 9. Every pilot in the squadron knew the legend. Falcon 9 had been the most promising Top Gun graduate in recent memory, known for reflexes that seemed superhuman and an ability to remain calm under impossible pressure. But she had vanished from elite fighter squadrons years ago, and no one knew why. After the successful egress, ground control's voice crackled through the radio. "Who's flying that A-10? Reyna remained silent for several seconds, then responded simply, "Falcon 9, returning to base." The truth began to emerge during the debrief session back at base. Reyna had indeed been the top graduate of her Top Gun class, legendary for her precision and tactical awareness. But during a high-stakes escort mission, her wingman had been killed while she was protecting a different element of F-16. The guilt had consumed her. She blamed herself for not being in the right position, for not anticipating the threat, for choosing to save some pilots at the cost of her closest friend. "I requested transfer to A-10s," Reyna explained to the assembled pilots. "I wanted to fly an aircraft designed to protect people, not one designed for personal glory." Commander Ross Hale, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "You didn't disappear because you failed. You disappeared because you couldn't forgive yourself for succeeding at an impossible choice." The F-16 pilots who had been rescued listened in stunned silence as they learned the full story. "We've been making jokes about the Hog," one young pilot said quietly. "We had no idea we were insulting someone who could outfly any of us." "You weren't insulting me," Reyna replied. "You were judging an aircraft by its appearance instead of its capabilities. The same mistake a lot of people make about pilots." A senior F-16 instructor spoke up. "Ma'am, the way you handled that rescue operation, that wasn't just flying skill. That was tactical genius. You turned our emergency into a textbook close air support mission." Other pilots began sharing their observations. "The way you used terrain masking to approach the target area, your target prioritization was perfect. You eliminated the most dangerous threats first. You flew into concentrated anti-aircraft fire like it was a training exercise." Reyna listened to their analysis, realizing that her attempts to remain anonymous had failed completely. "The A-10 gets called obsolete," she said finally. "But when your fast jets are trapped and need someone to come get you, suddenly obsolete doesn't matter. Reliable matters, tough matters. Getting the job done matters." That evening, the squadron gathered in the briefing room for an informal discussion about what had occurred. One of the rescued F-16 pilots stood up. "I want everyone to understand something. We almost died today because we flew into a trap. We're alive because someone flying a flying tractor came to get us." The pilot continued. "I've been making jokes about the A-10 for months. Today, I learned that in the right hands, that aircraft isn't just a ground attack platform. It's a lifeline." Commander Hale addressed the group. "Falcon 9 didn't leave elite fighters because she couldn't handle them. She chose an aircraft that matched her priorities, bringing people home safe." An older pilot, a veteran of multiple combat deployments, added his perspective. "I've seen a lot of heroic rescues in my career. What happened today ranks among the best. Not because of the aircraft, but because of the pilot. Reyna had spent years trying to escape the reputation of Falcon 9, believing that her past failures disqualified her from elite status. But the rescue mission had proven something she hadn't expected. Falcon 9 wasn't defined by the aircraft she flew or the missions she was assigned. Falcon 9 was defined by her willingness to risk everything to bring other pilots home safe. The A-10 hadn't been a step down from elite fighters. It had been the perfect aircraft for someone whose definition of success was measured in lives saved rather than victories achieved. As the debriefing ended, Reyna realized she no longer needed to hide from who she used to be. Falcon 9 and the A-10 pilot could be the same person, united by a single purpose: protecting those who needed protection most. The next day, Reyna sat quietly in the mess hall, eating her meal alone as she had done for months. But the atmosphere around her had completely changed. No more mocking comments about the A-10. No more jokes about flying outdated aircraft. No more dismissive glances or whispered insults. The pilot who had been most vocal in criticizing her aircraft approached her table and set down his food tray. "Ma'am, if you hadn't shown up yesterday, none of us would be here today." Other F-16 pilots nodded respectfully as she passed through the dining area. The change wasn't dramatic or theatrical. It was the quiet recognition that passes between professionals who understand competence when they see it. Commander Ross Hale stood up in the center of the mess hall, his voice carrying clearly to every corner. "I want everyone to remember what happened yesterday. The person we looked down on turned out to be the thunder that saved our entire squadron." There was no applause or cheering, but the weight of respect filled the room. From that day forward, the chair next to Reyna in the mess hall remained empty, not because people were avoiding her, but as a silent acknowledgement of the space that exists around someone who has made life-and-death decisions for others. A young F-16 pilot approached her after the meal. "Ma'am, would you be willing to teach us about close air support tactics? We obviously have a lot to learn." Reyna considered the request. The A-10 isn't just about tactics. It's about mindset. Are you sure you want to learn how to think like a Warthog pilot? After yesterday, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. That afternoon, Reyna found herself in a briefing room with the same pilots who had once mocked her aircraft. But now they listened with the attention of students learning from a master. She began teaching them not just about the A-10's capabilities, but about the philosophy behind close air support. Patience over speed, precision over power, protection over glory. The Warthog teaches you to think differently, she explained. It's not about being the fastest or the prettiest. It's about being there when people need you most. The pilots who had been rescued began to understand that they hadn't just been saved by superior flying skills. They had been saved by someone who had chosen to dedicate her career to saving others. A senior instructor observed from the back of the room, "I've watched a lot of pilots over the years. Most want to be the star. Falcon 9 chose to be the guardian angel. For the first time in years, Reyna felt proud of both her past and her present. People praise sleek F-16s and look down on the aging Warthog. People easily mock a quiet pilot flying an obsolete aircraft. But when real fire and death rained down, it was the Hog and its pilot who sheltered the entire squadron. Rea Vasquez didn't need titles or praise. Just one radio call. Falcon 9 returning. Enough to change everything. The lesson is clear. Never underestimate a person or a machine based on appearance alone. Thunder can come from where no one expects it. Sometimes the most valuable things aren't the newest or the fastest. Sometimes they're the most reliable, the most dedicated, the most willing to risk everything for others. Heroes don't always fly the most advanced aircraft. Sometimes they fly the ones that can take damage and keep flying, piloted by people who measure success in lives saved rather than records broken. If you've ever seen someone quiet do something extraordinary, leave a dot in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to SN Quiet Stories to hear more tales like this, stories the world almost forgot.